I definitely don't stand on the party line that giving everyone access to firearms will result in giant gun battles in the street. People have more sense than that.
People think that if you decide to carry a weapon that, at the slightest provocation, you're just going to whip it out and blast somebody. And I found that the opposite is actually true. You're far, far more careful about what situations you get into and how you react to them. I've carried a handgun habitually for 20 years.
You should be able to defend your home. You should be able to defend your family from an intruder who would cause you harm.
As he came up to the register, he pulled out the gun and wanted me to open the register. So I was in shock. I didn't really know what to do. So he said, open the register, open the pop. That was it.
I mean, obviously, I'm not going to overthrow the government. I don't see things getting that bad in the future that would ever be an option. But I guess if things came down to it, yeah, I think people would do that before they lost their right to have firearms. Because, I mean, no one wants to be violent. War's a horrible thing, but let's face it. If all the power is on one side, that's how dictatorships get started.
There seems to be increasing amounts of legislation, more gun laws, and gun law advocates don't seem to ever be satisfied with it. So if the ultimate, worst case scenario, Australia, and all private ownership of guns is repealed, what would be your take on that?
No, I absolutely would be against that. I think, if you outlaw guns, bad guys still have guns because they're bad guys. The people who would suffer would be law-abiding citizens that just need to protect themselves.
We have states like Florida and Oklahoma passing stand your ground laws. What would your reaction to that be?
I would vote for it. Actually, I did with the Castle Doctrine that we just voted for before we left Harrisburg. Yes, I think that if you are being attacked and your life is being threatened, or your family's life, or your friend's life, if you have an innocent person being threatened by a criminal, that person should have every right to defend themselves.
This is supposedly what the Navy SEALs use, man. I love it. For competition, I have an ACOG that I use. ACOG,
I definitely don't stand on the party line that giving everyone access to firearms will result in giant gun battles in the street. People have more sense than that.
Well, what about the idea of going in the other direction? What if they just freed up everything? Do you think that would have an impact? Because there seems to be a standing on crime. If we eliminate guns, we won't have any crime. On the other hand, if everyone has guns, we might have a bloodbath in the streets. I don't know. What are your ideas?
Well, I could say this. I know they have a law called, it's the gun show law or something like that. Pretty much you go to these gun shows, they have them a couple times annually, and you don't need any paperwork, you don't even need a license, you can just go buy the guns. I mean, that kind of law they need to get rid of. I'm not okay with people that have priors and stuff and violent crimes buying guns, but let's face it, criminals out there, they're not buying fully automatic AKs at the gun store, they're getting them black market. So all you're going to do is disarm citizens that are protecting themselves, and then the criminals are going to have a monopoly on the guns. And that just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. I don't know about anybody else, but
It's crime. It will not reduce crime because crime is not caused. Crime is caused by criminals.
So, if the opposite were true and all gun legislation was taken off the books and unrestrained, what do you think? What do you think would be the result of that?
Well, honestly, we would be at the same state we've always been. Criminals would have guns. Law-abiding citizens would have guns. Police officers, the military would have firearms. At base, I don't think it would run out of control.
Wait, what am I gonna do if I got 20 little kids and 2 of them are in a crib or something like that? What am I supposed to grab my whole family and run the other way? That's not happening. I'll go to jail before I allow somebody to come in and attack my family.
I have been a unarmed self-defense instructor for several years. I've taught professionally, and I am a big proponent of it as a first step or as a last resort. It is not the most efficient means of self-defense, and it's not for everyone. You can teach anyone. You can give anyone in the world a chance with the right techniques, and if you're a good instructor and they're a good student. But against multiple attackers or armed attackers, intoxicated attackers, just plain old criminals that don't attack you when you're ready for them and got your dukes up, you need a better advantage. You need a better equalizer. Because I have been in situations where I was attacked physically, but not by an armed attacker, and I had a handgun and did not choose to deploy it, but rather used unarmed techniques to deal with my attacker because I was confident that I could do that safely. That's a big gamble. People think that if you decide to carry a weapon that, at the slightest provocation, you're just going to whip it out and blast somebody. And I found that the opposite is actually true. You're far, far more careful about what situations you get into and how you react to them. I've carried a handgun habitually for 20 years. If you're really serious about protecting yourself, if you're really serious about being the one that goes home safe, get a handgun, learn how to use it, and get a permit. The amendment reads, shall not be infringed, which means that any test you put on it, any license you attach to it, any fees you attach to it, are all things that a hostile government could use to restrict a person's ability to exercise that right. A poll tax is a good historical example. We don't really want these people to vote, so we're going to say they're allowed to vote, but they've got to come up with $600, in order to go to the voting booths. Oh, look, they're all poor. That's not going to work, is it? Oh well, we gave them the right.
You remember what day it was in May?
Actually, it was April. April 22nd,
April
1995.
1995?
Mm-hmm. What happened was I was filling in for a coworker who had called out. I got called in, filled in for a shift that I don't normally work, the evening shift, 5 o'clock. Came in for work pretty much like any other evening shift. Got settled in, the previous shift left, was there for about an hour, and had a person come in through the door. Had their hood pulled down to just above their eyes, had their one hand holding the bottom part up to just below his nose. And I thought it was one of the local kids who came in and played around with us and just was being stupid. But as he came up to the register, he pulled out the gun and wanted me to open the register. So I was in shock. I didn't really know what to do. So he said, open the register, open the pop. That was it. The gun was actually pushed into my neck and went off, and I fell off the stool, and I was on the floor. He tried to open the register for probably about 15 to 30 seconds and then ran out the door. I managed to get over to the phone, dialed 911, and told them what was going on in no uncertain terms, and just tried to get some people there to help me. Of course, now at the time there was a mother and daughter out getting gas. They came in, they found me on the floor, and they grabbed napkins and applied pressure to my neck to keep things from getting any worse. And then we had the police responder, the first responder got there, and they got the ambulance there, they got the helicopter there, they wheeled me across the road to the parking lot where the helicopter landed, put me in the helicopter, off I went. Next thing I remember after that was waking up in the recovery room and being on the vent and having my fiance right there next to me.
And what exactly was the damage you found out?
What happened was he had pushed the gun into my neck, pulled the trigger. It was about an inch away from all the major blood vessels in the front, went through the back of my throat, bounced off of my spine, took a small chip out of it, didn't break anything, and then exited my throat the other side and came out right behind my ear, and still had enough velocity to go through the pegboard behind me and embed itself in the wall. There wasn't a lot of bad damage, but, missed major blood vessels in the front by an inch, missed everything in the back by a millimeter. That's 5 weeks before I got married. That was actually the first thing that Jerry said to me when I first came out of anesthesia. She was right there. I was still on the vent, and she looked at me and said, "Look, if you got cold feet and you think you're going to get out of this, you got another thing coming. I'll drag your gurney right down to the chapel and we'll do it here." It's very hard to laugh while you're on the vent, and I somehow managed to do it. Yeah. So, could have been a lot worse.
And what was the guy after?
He wanted money. He was apparently coming down off of his high and needed some money to continue that. Just decided that was a good way to get it.
Was this his first time committing?
No, they believe he had been robbing stores in the area. They think he robbed the store across the street about a week earlier.
Did he brandish a firearm? Or?
Oh yeah, he pulled it out. It was a .38.
The same one he used on you?
They believe so, yes. It was actually his father's handgun that he stole. So it should have been a lot harder for him to get that than it was. So they tried him for 3 things that each of them had a 5-year minimum. Possession of a handgun without a permit, discharging a firearm, and there was a third one that I don't remember off the top of my head. But each of those had a 5-year minimum. So theoretically, he should have been in for 15 years minimum. The judge ran all 3 of them concurrent. So he was basically, by the time he got his first parole, he was only in for like 6 years, 8 months.
Did he have any other firearm charges?
No, I think that's the only firearm charge that he had. So at least he learned something. I look back and go, well, I'm still here to talk about it, so it can't be that bad.
So you harbor no animosity towards your attacker?
No. I actually, in some ways, kind of feel sorry for him. Because he's, for the last 15 years, has been bouncing in and out of the system. And for the last 15 years, I've been able to live my life.
And because of all this, I sort of felt that you have earned your right to say your piece about the impending uncertainty as to the Second Amendment, whether personal firearm ownership would be repealed. What is your take on that?
My personal feeling is that if you feel that you need to have a firearm, that it's your right. You know, and I personally don't feel that I do, but if you feel that you have a right to do so, you should. You should be able to have it. I feel that you should be very safe about it. You should be very educated about how everything is supposed to work and be aware of the consequences if you do need to use it. But if you need it, I think you should be able to get it.
Do you think that violent crimes such as yours would be seriously diminished if people banned private gun ownership?
I think that the people who would do those crimes in general would find a way to get a gun. I think that it's not, it might slow it down a little, but I don't think it would completely shut it down.
What's your current retired rank?
Specialist, E4.
What's your personal interpretation of the Second Amendment?
Second Amendment is to allow for coalition of a militia, state militia. It doesn't allow for crazies out in the woods to band together. That's not the purpose of the militia. Militia is for the state to have protection against another state, which, you know, during the time the Bill of Rights was made was a possibility. It's also the right to bear arms. If the government wants to take away weapons, take away guns, what are they going to do to protect its citizens from criminals who are going to get guns anyway?
You don't think that coming from a military background, you don't think that the military and the police only having firearms would be sufficient?
No, not at all. In my experience in Iraq, they, during Saddam Hussein's reign, they weren't allowed to own firearms, weapons. See how that worked out. You had a dictator government.
Had the populace been armed in such a manner during Saddam's reign, what do you think their chances would have been of overthrowing him and restoring freedom there?
I've been 120% better. Saddam Hussein had a small ring of thugs, basically. It's like a modern-day mafia. His goons take care of business, shooting people.
He was using very little force to coerce his people to do exactly what he wanted them to do.
Oh, right. He didn't have to use a lot of force. I mean, he used force. He used assassination and stuff like that. But without a means to protect yourself, what are you going to do? I believe that anybody who puts on a uniform, whether it's military, police, not just a uniform, people that put on the pins, Congress, Senate, they should be upholding the Constitution and not trying to destroy it. People who wrote the Constitution, in the sense, geniuses. They knew that without the right to self-protection, then anything could happen. Government could take over. Foreign powers could come in and take over. You know, if you don't have a strong military, people still need to defend themselves.
No, I had another interviewee that said if the order came down from the commander-in-chief for the military to police its own people and effect a second civil war, he said that probably at least half of the personnel in the armed services would not follow such an order. What do you think?
It wouldn't actually. For the commander-in-chief that orders troops of police would be unconstitutional itself. I mean, people that don't want the weapons and firearms obviously are, number one, they're in it for political reasons. They're trying to get votes. Number two, somebody might have had a personal experience with firearms and they don't like them. The fact is, if you take guns out of the hands of respectable citizens, they're still going to be in the hands of criminals.
Has your life in any way been touched by firearm violence?
In this country, no.
Have you ever had to use a firearm to defend your own life?
Yes.
Could you just tell us about that?
Used in Iraq. So.
If you're not comfortable.
That's right.
Even if you could wave a magic wand and make every gun in the world disappear overnight, all you have done is make every weaker person a victim to every stronger person. You've taken everybody back to the Stone Age. You know, great. You've taken every beaten housewife with an abusive husband, every stalked college kid with a crazy boyfriend, every kid that wouldn't join the gang, and made them at the mercy of people that have no mercy and are stronger. You're taking away the only equalizer that exists. They're there. The bad guys are always going to have them, and the only sane response is to choose, if you know that you're in a situation, you're in harm's way, to choose to exercise the responsibility and your right to defend yourself and to do so efficiently. And that means handguns.